Guys, this is Tina. Welcome back to my channel. So I'm here really because I had shared with you my recent haul video, and I thought what I'd do is come along and give you some ideas for when you buy things and then you get home and kind of think, oh well, I'm not quite sure what to do with that, as I do quite often. So one of the things that I shared with you in my haul video was one of those vintage beautiful magazines. And I actually had, I've actually got a couple of them already that were slightly newer. So what I thought that I would do is share with you some ideas for using these types of things. Now, unfortunately, I'm going to zoom right out. Well, I am zoomed right out, in fact. These publications are really, huge. So I'm not going to be able to get this in, obviously, to the entire video. So what I'm going to do is obviously tear this down, and then we can use it in sections and things like that, really. So I'm going to go through, first of all, I have already started using this one, but I'm going to go through and just tear out a couple of pages. So I'm going to probably use, or possibly use, this page that I've already started using, and that one. And then we'll tear out another page, preferably one with quite smallish pictures, for, what I've got in mind today. So I'll just tear that one out, and we'll just see. I've got another one with smallish pictures. Oh, this one is absolutely perfect. So let's just tear that one out as well. Okie dokie. So I'm going to pop this to one side. So one of the first things that, I quite like to do is, if you follow my channel, you may recall that we made these little words just using, a book with some nice words on it, and just made these little words that are just then ready to go and ready to use in your journals and your pieces. So going along the same vein really is just making some kind of DIY ephemera, DIY kind of embellishments and things like that that will be just ready to grab and ready to go in your journals. So these pictures are absolutely perfect, as you can see, because they're quite small sizes, so they're going to work out just absolutely great. So I'm just going to chop along here in the first instance. And of course, you don't have to use the same publication as me or anything else. These are just ideas for, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I, have been guilty of buying things at a car boot sale, or, perhaps if you're watching in America, you would, go to a flea market or something. And then I get home and I just think, oh, I don't really know what I'm going to do with it. I do love it, but I get home and I just am clueless a little bit as to how I'm going to use something. So these, I just think, are quite a good way to use those types of things, really. So what I'm doing is cutting each picture out like that. Okie dokie. I have to confess that, this magazine, I've had this for a really long time. I don't know, maybe 2 years. A really long time. Because normally, not only do I get home and think, oh, I'm not quite sure how I'm going to use that. Occasionally I come home with a fixed plan of how I'm going to use things, but quite often I come home just having bought something because I've fallen in love with it, but then I'm not quite sure what to do with it. But I also then can't bring myself to use it, and I just have to just hoard it for a long while. So that's a bit what's been going on, obviously, with this one, is I've just been hoarding it. And then what I've got here, this is just some coffee dyed card. Now this is like 160 GSM, so it's not really thick. Let me just move this stuff out of the way so that we can focus a little bit better on what we're doing. It's not really thick, but it's certainly, thicker than obviously copy paper or something like that. And I've also then printed off a side of like coffee dyed pattern just from one of my kits there. So I can show you, on both basically. And what I like to just do to make a sort of really quick and easy embellishment piece, I'm just deciding which piece I want to use. So actually I might use this one. And to be honest, you can use double-sided tape for this, you can use glue. I'm going to just use some double-sided tape here, going back to my mini album days really, but I find double-sided tape quite quick and easy to use, and it's quite good because it gets away from the puckered effect at all that sometimes you can get with a wet glue. You know, and I've talked before about obviously the glue stick scenario, and as you know, I did buy some Yoo-hoo glue and you know, tried using that, but yeah, I found it quite fiddly and messy to use. So for me, double-sided tape is quite a good alternative for things like this. I'm not saying it's good for everything, but for things like this I find it quite useful. And then what I like to do is pop it down just like that with an edge, like a border, so as if it literally is a printed photograph, you know, from days gone by. So, and then you can just chop that round like that. And that's it. And that's a lovely embellishment then, ready to go into your journals. And then obviously these pictures are black and white. So what you can do, if it's looking a little bit, you know, black and whitey, I mean, although this is vintage, you know, but you might want to just go over it a little bit with your vintage photo, or, you know, whichever colour that you like to use. And then that just kind of browns the picture up a little bit. So it's less black and white and more got a sepia sort of, you know, edge to it. So that's that one. And then we'll just take sort of the other two, and I'll just show you a couple of other different looks with those. So exactly the same here. I'm just working out how to get the most out of my piece of paper. Right, let's just pop that out of the way and bring this one back in. Actually, I'm not going to use that. I'm not going to use that. So let me just grab another one. Hold on 2 moments. Right. I've got this one now. So again, exactly the same. Just going to pop this down. Like that. Okie dokie. Now for this one, what I'm going to do is just pop it on, and I'm going to let me just make sure that my double-sided tape isn't overhanging the photo. So what I'm going to do with this one is just pop it on exactly the same, but this time I'm just going to round the corners of this so as it gives it a slightly different look to this one. So if I just chop that down like that. Oops, a bit more. Okie dokie. Get rid of those bits. And then I'm just going to, again, just ink that picture up because, again, it's a little bit on the black and white side. I mean, I don't dislike the black and white. I quite like it, but obviously because I've backed this onto coffee dyed card, I just prefer it once it's inked up because it then has a bit more of a coffee kind of colour to it. And then all I'm going to do for this one is just round the corners here. Like that. Oops. Come on. Okay. Okie dokie. That's that one. And again, I mean, obviously you could just ink around the actual edges to make that, you know, stand out a little bit more. So that's look number 2. So, I mean, I know it's practically the same, but they do look different, you know, so it is worth playing around. And then the third one, this one, which actually I might just ink it up before I stick it down. That would probably be easier because then I'm not actually inking the piece of paper up as well. So then we're going to pop this down here. Okie dokie. So, I mean, exactly like the words, I just think these are great types of things. And I mean, you don't even have to use a magazine. You know, you might find a book with some beautiful vintage pictures in that you could just do similar things with those. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, you know, when they're just like thin on book page or magazine page, they're not like a postcard where they're solid and you could just, you know, pop them in as a pull-out. So by doing this, you're actually giving them a bit more sturdiness and rigidity, and then you can obviously, you know, use them more like a postcard. So that's that one. And then what I'm going to do with that is I'm just going to take my decollage scissors, and these are just those cheap sort of children's ones, and I'm just going to chop it down like that, because you know sometimes you get those vintage photos and they have the decorative edges. So just for a slightly different look and feel, you can then just cut it out like that. So, and again, you know, you might want to just go around your edges and highlight them, or, you know, make them stand out slightly more by just inking them up. So super simple. And I mean, they're on, obviously, you know, they're exactly the same concept, but I think they've produced 3 different sort of looks. And then another idea here. So this, I'm now taking some brown card. So again, let me pull the piece of paper in with the photographs. Okie dokie. So let's take this one. Now, obviously, this one is kind of a square one, which I'm not so keen on. Actually, what we could do is take this oval one. So let's do that. Okay. So I'm going to do exactly the same, i.e., you know, in inking it up. So let me just pop those out of the way again. So we'll just ink that up slightly, so it's just taking the black and white off of it slightly and making it more sepia and, you know, brown tinged like that. So this is just some cardstock, and this is just in a brown, you know, brown colour. And then all I'm going to do is cut around there, and I'm going to try and cut around it, keeping that white sort of frame, I think. Oh, this is like cutting a circle out. So I know I've said this you know, 100 times now, but I mean, fussy cutting flowers and things like that, they're so much more preferable to cutting out a circle or an oval, which, you know, if you muck that up, it's so much more obvious and, you know, so much harder to disguise. Okay. Okie dokie. So that's like that. And then again, you know, I mean, I have already inked this, but if you wanted to then ink up your edges a little bit more, like that. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pop it onto here, but I'm just going to have a quick rummage now in my drawer or on my desk and see what stamps I have got that would lend themselves to a sort of logo looking piece. You know, like when you get vintage photographs and they've got like a logo kind of in the bottom corner. So let me just have a bit more of a rummage in my desk now. And again, I probably should have been really super organised and done this before switching the camera on, but okay, right. Well, I have got this one, and I'm not saying that this is ideal. It's probably far from ideal. But let me get my, nope, that's just trying to find a black stays on. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try this out on my sort of scrap piece of paper here by just stamping that bottom portion to see how that would look. Okay, so if I were to have that maybe down there. I mean, obviously this does say something about a hosiery, which, you know, of course is not really, it's not really ideal, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to just place this piece of paper or card over that portion of the stamp, because I've got a little bit of that lady's leg. So, oops, now I've got ink on my fingers, so please excuse me, but let me just see whether that's any better. Okay, so I don't mind that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stamp that onto my brown card. Want it quite vivid, because obviously this is brown, you know, so it's not really dark or anything, like that. Okay. And then my photograph. Now often the logos are kind of to the side, but of course, you know, if you prefer to have it in the middle, which actually weirdly they are often to the side, but strangely actually I don't think it looks very good to the side. So I'm just going to take my photo. Well, I mean, it's not a photo, obviously, it's the magazine page. So now this time I will do it with glue, purely because obviously this is an oval, so I could do it with the double-sided tape, but I would have to use multiple pieces of tape, if you see what I mean, to get it to go right around as close as I could to the edges. So I'm just going to dab that off onto that piece of paper like that, because I don't really want the glue squeezing out. And I'm just going to pop that down here like that. Let me take my dried wet wipe, press that down, hopefully mopping up any glue that's just, you know, likely to seep out from the edges. Okay, now I'm not saying that that's the ideal stamp, and you know, probably I could have found a stamp that was perhaps a bit bigger or, you know, a bit better, but I mean, you know, we're just having a play around here and seeing what looks good. And I'm just going to chop that down here, because often those kind of vintage photographs, they're often, you know, they're tall and narrow, aren't they? Well, I'm not saying they always are, but sometimes they are. So that's that. Cut down to size. Going to round the corners. I think I've made it very straight at the top, but again, never mind. I mean, often, actually, I've bought those vintage photographs, and I mean, sometimes they're really like jaggedy, and it's not like they've been torn. It's often that they're almost like cut like that. So I don't feel so bad now about my shoddy cutting sometimes. So, right, so that's that. Now, again, I don't know how well this is even going to show up. It might be completely pointless doing this, but let me move this out of the way. So get the over there. So it might be completely pointless doing this because this is brown cardstock. So, you know, again, I don't know how well my vintage photo is really even going to make a difference, but you can just ink around your edges there with your vintage photograph, vintage photo. And that's that little photograph there. I mean, I think that looks so lovely. I don't know about you guys, but I hope that I'm in frame and that you can kind of see what we've done there. So if I just move that out of the way, and we'll just have a look at those. Okay. And then I'm just going to show you something else. So hold on. Right, I just wanted to break the video off there because I wanted to dig out a better stamp. So what I'm going to do is cut out another one. So I'm going to use one of these round ones here again. So, cutting out a circle again. So again, really carefully and slowly cut the circle out. So let me just trim that off to the side. And actually, again, what I'm probably better off doing, let me just move these out of the way, is inking this up. I'm just going to ink it up a bit here. There we go. Okey, right. And now I'll just cut that out. Okay. Yeah, I mean, as I say, you know, you really don't have to have one of these magazines or anything. You can find vintage pictures, you know, all over the place. It's just that I happen to have bought these magazines and I just thought I would share some ways of using them with you guys. Now, what I have done is I have dug out what I'm hoping is going to be a better stamp for producing a logo. So this is some crafty individual stamps. These aren't part of my freebies that they, you know, kind of gifted me. I think these are still available on their website. The code for these is CI341. They're like perfume, vintage perfume logos and things like that. So what I'm hoping is this one's going to be really nice for one of those vintage photo logo type appearances. So again, I'm just going to, well, what I probably should do is be really well behaved and pop that onto my clear block. So I'm just going to stamp that onto, I've got here some buff coloured card. Oh, I must stop calling it that. It is called craft card, obviously. So that's just there to the side. Now this also has got these little swirls, which I've had these for a really long time. And as you can see, the packaging is falling apart. But what I'm going to just quickly do, because I've never used this one, as you can see, but I might be able to incorporate the swirl somewhere. So just going to mount that, I think, on a little bit of this foam. Oh, so I've already peeled the back off there. So let's just pop that on there so as I know what stamp that is. Let me just cut that down. So this is just mounting on the fly. This was not part of my plan for this video, obviously. But you know what it's like, sometimes when you're doing something, you then start getting more ideas as you go. So that's what's obviously going on here. So, I mean, this is a very tiny stamp. I don't know what it's going to be like because, as I say, I haven't ever used this tiny one. Me and tiny don't generally get on that brilliantly. Again, let's pop it on here because there's not much to actually grab hold of because it's such a tiny stamp. Let's just see what that's like. Oh, that's gorgeous, isn't it? So where would I have that? Maybe under here? Maybe just under the logo. And I guess we could. I don't think I've stamped that logo very straight, to be honest. No, I'm going to leave it like that because I don't think they tend to have all sorts of things then stamped over. And it's very easy to get carried away, isn't it, when you start doing things and then, you know, overdo it. So I might have this to the side, you know, like they often do on the vintage photographs. So again, I'm just going to glue this down because, again, obviously being a circle, you know, you can obviously use your double-sided tape, but personally I would then have it, you know, cut the tape into really tiny bits so as I could go as close to the edge all the way round, which is fine, and I don't mind doing that. But obviously when you're doing a video, that's probably just not very fun to watch. So just pressing that down again with my dry wipe so as I can hopefully catch any excess glue. Okie dokie. And then we're just going to cut that out like that. And across the top. checking that that looks vaguely straight. Okay, not too bad. And then what I'm going to do is just go in here like that. And then ink this up. So, and obviously this is that craft card, so I'm going to ink it quite a bit so it looks, you know, really nice and vintagey. And it doesn't matter if it's all patchy. I mean, I'm not the best inker in the world, so mine tends to be patchy anyway, but it doesn't matter because often when you buy those photos, they are quite patchy. I mean, this is supposed to be an aged photo after all. And I mean, actually, this is an aged picture, you know, it genuinely is. So I'm just going to go around the back. Oops, I've obviously touched my black stays on there on the back, so that's not great. But again, I mean, if this were a genuine vintage piece, you know, the chances are you're going to have some marks on it because obviously it's old, so don't get too worried. Okay, and then what I thought was, what I switched the video off in the first place to get was some gold paint, because sometimes they have a bit of gold edging. So again, I'm just going to be really messy and just use my finger for this. I'm trying to be light-handed. Again, if you join me regularly, you will know that, you know, me and light-handed just do not really go together. So I tend to be a bit of a heavy-handed person. Oops, like there. So trying to get just literally the edge portion here is pretty tricky for me. It's a stretch to say the least. So, but it does help to just have my little dab of paint to the side rather than, you know, apply it to my finger, because then obviously I would have a huge amount. So being light-handed with a huge amount would be even trickier than it's proving now. So okay, go around. Okay, just a tiny bit there that I just have kind of missed that. Because I just think sometimes those vintage photos have that gilded edging, don't they? You know, not a great deal. You know, you don't have to go too mad, but just to add a little something to that. So I'm going to get rid of that completely out the way before I end up dipping it into anything else. So if I just now pull all the photos in that we've done. So we've got this one, which hopefully the camera is picking up. You can just see that little bit of gold around the edge there. Just looks gorgeous, doesn't it? And again, you know, if you wanted to then alter it further, I'm just kind of laying them all down now to show you the different types of looks that we've produced now, just using that, you know, photos or pictures from that page from that magazine. What you could also do is obviously go over this with some sort of like Mod Podge or, you know, varnishy type finish, because obviously again photos are often, you know, they're quite glossy, aren't they? In fact, let's do that. So I'm just going to grab my Mod Podge, grab my stiff brush, which probably is not going to produce the nicest finish, I have to confess, but again, that's just what comes of being a bit of a shoddy sort of crafter. So I'm just trying to soften the bristles up on the fly here. Right, let me just see whether I've got any book page or anything. No, I haven't. Right, okay, let me move this to the side. Let me just grab something to, like, lean on. Just in the hopes that I'm not going to be literally spreading this all over the desk, because obviously that will then be getting on everything. So, okay. So just going to try and paste that all over. And, you know, of course, as well, an added bonus of this is it's really sticking your photo down. So if your photo was not, you know, glued especially firmly, this is now obviously helping that stick as well. So there we go. Now, I mean, I find Mod Podge dries pretty quickly, so I'm sure that this will dry, you know, in no time at all. And then we can obviously lift that back in. I'm just going to pop that to one side just for a few minutes. As I say, it will probably dry, you know, super quickly. Oops, I can't get the lid back on my Mod Podge. Okay, let me just move this out of the way now. Okay, and I'm just going to show you how our bits would look tucked into a journal. So this is a journal that I have been working on. I'll best shut my ink so that I'm not dabbing that on everything that I touch. But I'm just going to show you like how they would look, obviously tucked in. So, you know, that's that one. So, I mean, they really, you know, they look really nice, don't they? And I mean, I think they look quite like a sort of genuine vintage picture, to be honest. And this one as well, on the dark brown card, I think this is probably my favourite one, actually. But again, you could go around that with the gilt edge, which would then just look, you know, super yummy, wouldn't it? So, you know, and it adds a splash of colour to the page. So let me just bring this one back in. I mean, obviously I can't tuck this in because this is actually drying still. I had hoped it would be completely dry, but it's still drying. Oops, I've now got something stuck on there. Hold on. But again, so that's how that one's looking. And, you know, of course you could Mod Podge the rest as well. But yeah, I just wanted to come on and quickly share those little ideas with you, because I just think they turned out, you know, so pretty. And yeah, just kind of sometimes I know that I get home and I've bought these things and I then think, oh my God, you know, gosh, what am I going to do with them? So just a few little quick ideas there. So hope that you have fun if you decide to play, and thank you very much for joining me. Thanks then. Bye.